Everything is personal right here. Everything is personal right here.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another episode of Everything is Personal. And today, our guest is Dr. Carl Rothchild. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on your show. I love having this opportunity to explain some things that I think some people out there may even not know about, or at least have some misconceptions about the whole subject.
Well,
Um,
I wanted to ask you, so you've been in healthcare, and correct me if I'm wrong, since like 1979. And we were just talking about, earning your stripes and going through and having multiple practices and doing all these different things. But this was long before red light therapy. So what was, how did it get on your radar in the first place?
well, if I may, I just want to mention that in 1972, I was a junior at Stony Brook University out in Long Island, which is a pretty good school.
Mm.
And I was a pretty good student. I was a biologist, I did research, all kinds of stuff, but I couldn't figure out what I wanted to do in my career. And chiropractic came onto my radar, so to speak. And
Mm.
I started calling chiropractors all over the country, and everyone I called loved what they were doing. Now, I was also a hippie of the sort. My version of hippie was that money was not going to be where I was going to go. If I don't mind making money, but that would not be my direction. My direction is helping people. And I know it sounds corny, but there are people like me that actually get pleasure out of helping others. And that's what I did. I went into a profession, and I'm so glad I did. I actually started in 78. And
Wow.
I loved what I was doing and helping so many people. And then about 20 years into my practice, which would be about 27, 28 years ago, I was introduced to red light therapy. And I want to tell you that there was a medical doctor who got really heavy into red light therapy before anybody really knew anything about it. And he's the one that got the FDA clearance. He's really the one that promoted it and pushed it. And I knew him before he was involved with light therapy. And he hands me this thing that's about this big, that's in the shape of a flashlight of sorts. And he says, "Here, I want you to help me save the world." Something like that. And what he was saying is that I would take this into my practice and shine this flashlight of sorts onto the people, and it would make a difference. And of course, I thought he was crazy. And but I did it. I promised that I would use it, and we did. And within a period of time, it started becoming obvious that this darn thing did do something. Now imagine that device was at the time the state of the art, but it was thousands of times weaker than what we currently have. And yet and still we had decent results with that all the ways back 27 something years ago. And I would use it on all, I would go to my patients and say, "Look at, you know what I've been working on with you up to this point. What else you got besides that?" Because I got this device, and the only thing we knew back then and still know is that the worst that'll happen is nothing. There are absolutely have never been a recorded side effect. In the 50 years that this has been studied, there's never been a recorded side effect. So you couldn't hurt somebody if you tried. Knowing that, what do you got? And this lady would say, "I have gum disease." I helped her gum disease. This guy said, "I have kidney problem." Helped his kidney problems. This person had a ripped Achilles tendon. So we had sent him to the orthopedic surgeon who he needed surgery. So it was about a week before the surgery was going to take place. So I saw him every day using the light, figuring, well, it couldn't hurt, right? So let's try it. And when he went for the surgical review, he didn't need surgery.
Wow.
And yeah, we started getting one pretty interesting surprise after another. And so I went through that first device being a class one, and as technology goes, things got better, got lighter, got whatever. So then we went to class two, class three, and eventually class four device. And then about 14, give or take, years ago, we found out that there was an element of light that actually helped to shrink fat cells.
Mm.
Now, if you don't know this, there's probably nothing more popular, or one of the most popular things in the health industry is weight loss. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
if I want to build a business and I can offer them a healthy way to lose fat, um, that will not kill. It's not like freezing the fat, boiling the fat, lasering the fat. It's not like ultrasonic cavitation, radio frequency. It's not about destroying fat cells. It's about just making some slight changes that does not damage the fat cells at all to allow the fat contents to leak out temporarily. And then with our unique protocol, we move the fat away from the fat cells and eventually to the liver for use or elimination. And the only thing that we need is somebody to do some cooperation. But we don't want to put them on an outrage. Anybody's going to lose weight with 500 calories a day. And there are a lot of 500 calorie a day diets. And yes, you'll lose the fat, but when you get off that thing called a diet, by definition, a diet is a beginning and an end. And once it ends, the likelihood of that person continuing on and staying on that diet and or continuing to lose fat or not at least gain the fat back is pretty slight. In fact, the evidence shows that over 95% of people who are on any diet within a year have put it all back on and often even more. So we want what I call a simple diet, an easygoing diet, but also a smart diet. And pair that with red light therapy, and the results are spectacular. But at any rate, there I am learning that light can help with fat loss, and that's when I got even more heavily involved to the point where we started manufacturing our own equipment, knowing in fact that I wanted the best, I wanted the strongest, I wanted the most effective, and we created some really quality, wonderful things out there, having great success with fat loss and some healing. If you put the pads that we put around the belly, up the thighs, and whatever for fat loss, in those same or different areas, you can also put them around the knee, and it would help with healing and things like that. And I'm
Would
going to
you?
go over the mechanism of how it works for healing in a moment. But I
Mhm.
just want to mention that, well, go ahead and ask your question.
I was going to say, was there ever a health challenge, a personal health challenge that you had that you may have used red light therapy to help yourself, or maybe somebody that's close to you in your family that you saw
I
it
have
work?
an infinite number of testimonials, but me personally, I'm 73 years old and I have
Yeah.
worked fairly hard on keeping myself healthy. I
Mm,
never smoked. I don't drink.
mm.
I exercise regularly. And so taking care of myself has always been a priority, and I'll tell you why. It's not because I'm the most disciplined person in the world, but the people out there who are not taking care of themselves, you know why they don't?
Why?
Often because they're not scared enough. They don't know what they're doing today, how that's going to affect
Yeah.
them when they're 70 and 80 years old. But I got to see that.
Yeah.
Patients coming. Now, I didn't just see thousands of patients, I saw over hundreds of thousands of patients. So I got to see a good smattering of people who were in really bad shape. And when you look at it, you see that they didn't take care of themselves.
Yeah.
And here now, they're 75 or whatever years old, it's too late, or it's very far down the road. And so I try to convince people as early as you can, think about what you're going to be like. And can you hear your 75-year-old self crying because you screwed up? And
Yeah.
because now, I liken well-being and health like a candle that burns bright all the ways from the top to the bottom
Yeah.
and then sputters out and dies. That's what it
Yeah.
should be like. It's not about health span. I'm sorry, it's not about lifespan. It's about health
I'll
span.
say.
I mean, the
Yeah.
highest quality of life for as long as you can. And so a lot of people are not that worried about it because they're just ignorant to the fact of what they're doing to themselves.
Yeah.
So again, I don't think I was the most disciplined person. I was scared the heck of
Yeah.
winding up like these other people did.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a great example you brought up, and I want to reemphasize that statement because when I was a kid, my grandfather had a stroke, and a really large man, and my grandmother was really little, and we immigrated from another country, and language was still difficult, and I remember, first of all, the way they ate. Second of all, the amount of pills and all that stuff they took. And I was remember my mom sitting, my grandmother, and calling the doctors and trying to do the contraindications because the side effects were causing them other health issues. And I got scared. And you're absolutely right. It's that fear of seeing with my own eyes what somebody who's strong, big, and becomes incapacitated and dependent on somebody else, it actually led me to saying, I never want to end up like that. What can I do with my life as a kid, health wise, so I don't end up like that? So yeah, it definitely makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
In talking about that, where did you grow up?
Brooklyn, New York. And then I
Uh,
went out to Stony Brook University for school.
yeah.
And then in 1972, when I was trying to decide what I wanted to do, it became clear that the best school at that time in the world was in Los Angeles. So I migrated 1975, legally migrated
Yeah.
from Brooklyn to Los Angeles and haven't left. I'm not exactly in, I'm outside of Los Angeles in Bel Air, but I've never left for the weather, for the contacts I've made. And really, at the time when I moved here, California was a mecca for health, natural healing,
Yeah.
better than anywhere else in this entire nation. So I was glad I did. But at any rate, so there I am doing fat loss and having great success with people. And I don't think there's a lot of people that know as much about fat loss as I do,
Mhm.
because my mother was an executive of Weight Watchers when I was, before I was a teenager.
Mhm.
And that sounds like fun, but I never had a good thing to eat again when I was living at home because bean sprouts became, instead of spaghetti. And
Yeah.
that's an example of what we had. But at any rate, we did really well until COVID hit.
Mhm.
And then our practitioners called up and said, look, to stay open, we need less physical contact between the patient and the provider. What do you got?
Mhm.
And so we came up with, if you can see this bed, this is version 5 or 6. Well, now we're going back to our first version of the bed, which meant that you didn't need staff and still don't. So the patient could get in and out of bed themselves. They don't need help. And so when someone says, well, what does it cost? I said, well, first of all, from a revenue stream and what you're going to make, it doesn't cost you anything staff wise because the patient can get in and out of the bed themselves. So we started making these beds that many years ago when COVID first hit and started delivering them just as a substitute for what we had been making up to that point, which was pads and lasers and things just to cover parts of the body. And what we then started getting feedback about a month after we started delivering a first series of beds, and the results were outrageous. I don't know what other word to use, where people would call us with unbelievably great success with their health condition. And what we learned since is that when you bathe the entire body at the same time, and this is important, bathing the whole body from head to toe, left and right, front and back, inside and out, and affecting as many cells as possible. And I'm going to go over the mechanism in a little while. That's where the miracles come from. So let me give you an example of what I call a miracle. But before I do that, I want to tell you I cannot and will not make any claims. I'm just reporting the news. And when I make claims, it's about the technology in general. In fact, before I even go there, let me talk to you about Google Scholar. Some of you might be familiar with this. It looks just like Google, but it's the scholarly version. And you put in the word in Google Scholar, you put in the phrase with quotes, red light therapy, and then press enter, and you're going to see thousands and thousands of studies, double blind studies, research papers, articles, all kinds of stuff about red light therapy. And then you're going to put in whatever condition you're thinking about: lupus, anything, I don't care, any musculoskeletal issue, any neurological issue, it makes no difference. You will see hundreds, if not thousands, of double-blind studies, research papers, articles, and all kinds of stuff about each of these subjects. So the question, it begs the question of why, if it's so well studied and it's everywhere, why isn't it, I'm sorry, why isn't it everywhere?
Yeah.
But let me tell you, somebody with a wound, if we put them in our bed, they were first of all told, third-degree burns, that they were going to have permanent scarring and 6 months of pain and 6 months of drugs. And I can tell you that by the middle of the second week, the pain is completely gone using the bed. And by the end of the middle to end of the third week, it is gone. No scarring. It looks like nothing ever happened to it. And we see that time and time again, but it's not in the wound center.
Mhm.
So why isn't it in the wound center? Why isn't it in every OR? Because right after surgery, if you put somebody in the bed, their recovery is going to be unbelievable.
Mhm.
And the reason is because this country is about money.
Mhm.
It's about drugs and surgery. So time and time again, we'll see people who needed surgery, supposedly. They use the red light therapy and now they don't need surgery. There's no medical doctor, especially no surgeon out there that's thrilled with knowing that. So I'm going to put that aside right now. So
Mhm.
getting back to bed, let me give you an example. Arnett calls up and says that he's having a heart attack once, if not twice a week. Had you ever heard of that?
No.
I hadn't. So it started 12, 13 years ago. It actually started much longer than that, but by 12 or 13 years ago, when it was getting more frequent with the heart attack, they implanted a defibrillator in his chest. So every time he died, it would zap him back to life. Hundreds of times he died. Hundreds of times he came back to life. By the time we met him, it was once a month in the beginning, twice a month, three times a week. By the time we met him, it was twice a week. And he was steadily going downhill. And so the practitioner calls me up and says, should I even treat him? I don't want him having a heart attack in my office. I said, normally a dose is 12 minutes. How about if we just treat him 5 minutes, stay in the room the whole time, and see what happens? The patient goes home that night after the treatment. That was 2 years ago. He's had more treatment, but he's never had another heart attack since.
Wow.
And everything has come back to life. Everything. And one of the things that he says, and again, his name is Arnett, and I'm telling you this because I'm going to send you a series of videos that I welcome you to send to your audience and watch yourself. And Arnett will tell you one of the things he said, one of the things he did not expect is that his energy would now be through the roof and
Wow.
his erectile dysfunction is gone. And everything else, as I said, has come back to life, including his normal blood pressure, normal pulse, and everything. And that's just one of many testimonials that we have with people who have had unbelievably beautiful results.
So what's happening on a cellular level when red light interacts with our bodies?
So I promise you, I'm going to tell you, but I have a few things to tell you first. I'm going to make you sweat it out.
All right.
We talked about Google Scholar.
Yeah.
I want to tell you that our level of success is so outrageous that I'm challenging every one of you out there that if you have not tried this bed at least 6 times, now I'm not in practice, I'm not inviting you to my office, and I'm not telling you this for any financial gain, other than to tell you that if you haven't tried this bed 6 times, now a dose is 12 minutes, so that's 3 times a week for two weeks, 12 minutes a dose. If you haven't tried it 6 times, you are no longer allowed to complain about your ailments. And I don't care what you have. You can have multiple sclerosis. You can have Parkinson's, dementia, Alzheimer's, multiple sclerosis, I was saying, neuropathy, any orthopedic problem, rheumatoid arthritis, stroke. You were talking about somebody that had a stroke. Your
Yeah.
uncle, is that who it was?
Grandfather, but yeah. Hmm.
Imagine we have a lady that had a stroke, and after 8 visits, she was better than before she ever had the stroke.
Hmm.
And she saw a difference after just one visit. That's important for me to mention. It usually doesn't, it takes more than one visit, but every once in a while, some people respond even just in one visit. We had a lady with severe Parkinson's and dementia, and the family couldn't handle her anymore at home. And they were going to put her in a home, and they were depressed about that. Let's put it that way.
Hmm.
So they tried the bed as their last resort, and it was very difficult getting this very rigid individual into the bed to start off with. But
Hmm.
getting out of the bed just after that one time was much easier. And
Hmm.
after just 2 or 3 weeks of treatment, she was lucid and much more mobile, and her quality of life, she continued to have treatment and would, as I suggest, have treatment for the rest of her life. She's an
Hmm.
85-year-old, so she's never going to be like she was when she was 20. But
Right.
all this is about is getting the highest quality of life possible.
Hmm.
So at any rate, so we talked about Google Scholar. I did want to also talk about two other things. One is my book, as you can see right here. I don't make a penny off of this book. Any profit goes to charity. But it's a really good study on red light therapy. It's called Illuminated Healing.
Mhm.
You go to Amazon, you'll be able to find it there. Again, I'm going to be sending you show notes, and you're more than welcome to send that out to your audience. And then the last thing on this background of mine is the YouTube channel. So if
Mhm.
you go to YouTube and put in the @ sign and then Trifecta Light Official,
Mhm.
you're going to see 130 or more videos that are really excellent about testimonials, about how red light works and all that sort of stuff. And they're really well done. So I would recommend that you check that out as well. So now
Yeah.
why don't we go over the mechanism of how we talked about fat loss, and that's kind of simplistic. So let's talk about my favorite discussion, and that is how this works for healing and for taking care of the body. And again, I'm not telling you anything that's not already documented. When you go to Google Scholar, you can look this up.
Mhm.
What they originally weren't sure how it worked. Again, I told you when I first got the lights that we were using 27, 28 years ago, the only thing we knew for sure is it couldn't hurt.
Mhm.
And by the way, while we're talking about that's called side effects, there are
Mhm.
none in the 50 years that they've studied this. There's never been a recorded side effect. But I also wanted to mention about contraindications. In other words, who should or should not use the bed. And I want to mention to you that electronics is not an issue. So pacemaker, the defibrillator, not contraindicated.
Mhm.
Metal implants, so a recent shoulder replacement, knee replacement, whatever, hip replacement, would be good to get in the bed sooner rather than later because the healing will occur much faster and much more thoroughly.
Mhm.
So essentially, almost zero contraindication. Let me tell you the one contraindication that's really a legal contraindication, and it's called pregnancy. And this is a common contraindication for many different technologies out there. Because if that baby comes out anything other than perfect, those parents are going to want to sue anybody that was in the neighborhood. And I just say, you know what? Let's not be in the neighborhood. Even though we know the lights are wonderful for the mother and the fetus, who knows why a baby comes out less than perfect? And it could be genetic, it could be whatever. Just let's not be in the neighborhood. That's the only real contraindication. So now let's talk about how it works. Now we're talking about sunlight. What we've done is taken four elements of sunlight, not UV light, not any other color light that can cause problems with a whole bunch of different things, just red and near infrared. So to that end, let's talk about the word infrared. A lot of people have heard that word. There's no such thing as just infrared. It's either far infrared, which is heat, or near infrared, which is not heat. We want not heat.
Mhm.
And so that for that reason, I wanted to tell you that heat is the absolute enemy. Heat will draw more blood to the surface of the skin, and that would block the penetration of the light. Heat is the enemy. You don't want heat.
So when you're doing like infrared saunas, are you saying that that's not a good thing for you to use?
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that if you want the miracle changes, you don't want to use that. You could use that afterwards.
It's not for it doesn't stimulate. Well, I don't want to go into how it works because I have my own thoughts. So
It's just
it's
heat.
different. You're right. Got it.
Heat's a
It's heat.
nice thing. I mean,
Heat.
getting a
Right.
jacuzzi, take a hot shower,
Right. Right.
or using a more convenient far infrared sauna is fine.
Right. Right.
When they say infrared sauna, most of the time they're talking about far infrared saunas. That's
Got
heat.
it.
And
Clear.
putting toast in your toaster and getting it toasted. Let me say that again. Putting bread in your toaster and getting toast is far infrared. That's heat. That's heating up the toast.
Understood.
Is there anything wrong with that? No. But when we're talking about making cellular changes to get the kind of results I'm talking about, like with Arnett with the heart attacks, like with Steve, who contracted Lyme disease when he was 12,
Mm.
and it ruined his life. I mean, his childhood, his social life, his education, and career wise, some days he couldn't show up
Yeah.
because he was a mess. It ruined his energy. He had brain fog, whatever. On a bad day, he was a mess. So he never really could have a solid career. And then he tries our bed, gets out of the bed after one dose, and notices nothing different. But as I'm interviewing him, he goes, but 5 hours later and ever since, it's totally changed his life. And so
Mhm.
that's what gives me goosebumps because I love helping people and I love people looking me in the eye and saying, and I want to thank you for giving me my life back.
Mhm.
That's what I went into this business for in the first place.
Mhm.
So there we are with the word infrared. There's far infrared, no help for us. Near infrared is considered not hot.
Right.
It's not cold. They called it cold laser. It's not literally cold. It's just not hot. Heat is the enemy. It dilates blood vessels, brings more fluid to the surface, blocks the penetration of the light. So now, which is what we use for the fat loss, but also glorious. It does have some work that it can help us with healing. And then the near infrared, which is really that powerful wavelength that we've extracted. Essentially, we've extracted 4 wavelengths from the sun, so to speak. We didn't literally go to the sun, but these are 4 wavelengths that you would otherwise get from the sun.
Right.
And what we've done is magnify them many times and drive it into the person's body.
Mhm.
And in the beginning, they didn't know why it worked so well, and now they know. And what they found is that first I'm going to do some biology here, just briefly. Not going to go into too much detail, but you know about the word mitochondria. You know that the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the body. It's the reason why you breathe oxygen and eat food to create this very important molecule called ATP.
Mhm.
That ATP is the energy currency of your body. And if you have the right amount of ATP, you're good.
Mhm.
Even from a healing point of view, even from warding off possible dangerous bacteria, virus, whatever. The people that had the right amount of ATP did not succumb to COVID as readily as people who had poor amounts, or what we call mitochondrial dysfunction.
Right.
So ATP production is critical here. Now, I do
Mhm.
want to mention to you how prevalent the mitochondria is. When I went to school 1,000 years ago, we learned that there was one mitochondria in every cell. And we
Mhm.
now know that that's not true. That in fact, the heart, which has the highest demand for energy, has over 5,000 mitochondria in each cell.
Mhm.
And that the mitochondria is so prevalent and so important that now they know that the mitochondria makes up 10% of your body weight. Now think about that. Bone, hair, blood, all that stuff. And yet and still, mitochondria makes up 10% of your body weight. Come on,
Mhm.
that's pretty outrageous. And when I learned that, I was surprised, to be honest with you, and thrilled to know that people are starting to recognize the value of ATP, the value of the mitochondria, and that there are diseases called mitochondrial dysfunction. There's a whole process of mitochondrial dysfunction, books on it, and yet now we know all they need to do is to get the proper lights that are on our bed, and we can get people through mitochondrial dysfunction relatively easily. So what
Got
does
it.
it do? So the sunlight, these 4 elements of light, stimulate. They thought it was the mitochondria that was being stimulated by the sunlight, and it's not. It's
Mhm.
an element in this mitochondria called cytochrome C oxidase
Mhm.
that is a chromophore, meaning it is affected and is stimulated by sunlight, that then stimulates the mitochondria to come back to life,
Mhm.
into disease and eventually death, and reversing that with the right amount of ATP being produced by the body. And
Mhm.
that's the glory. That's why it sounds like snake oil when someone says, you mean every tissue in the body can be helped? Every condition in the body conceivably could be helped?
Mhm.
Pretty much. And so I have to apologize to the really analytical people when they go, yeah, this sounds like a bunch of crap. Okay, well, first of all, go to Google Scholar and you'll see a lot of the research. And then also watch our testimonials. And
Yeah.
then know that mitochondria is in every cell of your body. And so I don't care if it's nervous tissue. I don't care if it's bone, muscle, ligament. It doesn't matter if it's an organ or a gland. They're all subject to improvement, and I mean dramatic improvement, by stimulating those tissues with this beautiful four wavelengths of light energy.
Yeah.
And it ain't subtle. The results are absolutely spectacular.
I mean, it makes total sense if you kind of get an analogy that, you have electric cars and you need to charge the battery. And if your light wavelengths are charging the battery that's going to produce the energy to power the production of your cells, I mean, it makes sense in that way because that's, the way you described it, that's the way I'm consuming that information and giving it back to you. In that way, I'm, maybe not scientifically accurate, but if you're able to stimulate your battery and charge it and give it enough, it can produce more energy to, create more cells.
I
That
haven't used that analogy before, but it's not bad.
okay, all right,
Hey,
okay.
it's not so much a battery, but I get it. I mean, I might steal that one.
You can have it. It's yours. But here's
Anything I can do to make it easier for people to understand.
well, that's what I try to do. That's why I wanted to say it that way
I
because
like it.
we can talk about ATP, mitochondria. We can talk about, but people need to like visualize it as a battery, and you're charging your battery so you can create
Okay.
more energy. But I wanted to ask you because I used red light therapy. So I tore my meniscus, and my girlfriend bought me this thing, and all the things I'm doing. But there is so much misinformation. And I wanted to ask you what frustrates you most about red light therapy because it's everywhere. I just came back from the AI Wellness and the Fit Expo, and I was
I
speaking
was
at.
there.
Oh yeah, I didn't,
Our
well,
bed was there.
I think I saw it. I was walking around there.
The
I
AI
was
Wellness Pavilion.
Yeah, I was speaking upstairs the AI
Me
Wellness, but
too.
well, we
We probably
probably
killed each other.
on Saturday. So I don't know which day.
I was there Thursday to set up, Friday for movies, and then Saturday and all the, and part of Sunday.
Well, anyway, so I mean, the amount of information, the amount of stuff that's out there, and you go to a lot of these like A4M, there's so many red light therapies. You can go on Amazon and buy. What frustrates you most about this industry where now everybody's incorporating, all right, it's red light, it's all the same, but it's not, is it?
Of course, it's not.
Right.
So here's what you're going to want to look for. First of all, the most expensive part and the most important part are the lights. And the lights need to be medical grade. So what is a medical grade light? No heat. So there are very few devices out there that can give you the power that we're talking about and not generate heat. But also you want it to be customizable so that somebody who's 400 pounds is getting a uniquely different dose than somebody that's 80 pounds. You see, this
Mhm.
person who's 400 pounds has a lot of flesh and they
Right.
can absorb a lot of this energy without generating heat.
Mhm.
The 80 pounder has no flesh, next to no flesh. And so they can't tolerate the same power that the 400 pounder can. So you want to make sure that your bed is customizable. You've got the medical grade lights that don't get hot. There are only a couple of beds out there that do that. And the only other couple of beds that I know of besides ours are more than twice the price of our bed. So
Mhm.
our bed leases for about $1,400 a month.
Mhm.
And from a business point of view, nobody's making less than 10 times return on investment. I just had this lady tell us about great results she's having, and she referred 18 people to the office that she's going to because it's not satisfied patients that refer. I need you to know that. It's excited patients
Yeah.
that refer. And you're never going to see more excited. I've never seen this many excited patients. When you got a guy like Joey who couldn't walk, for 15 years, he was paying every day and couldn't walk. He had Charcot-Marie tooth disease. And after 6 visits, he was one of the first ones that got to use the bed years ago. And he's one of the first ones that said, and I want to thank you for giving me my life back. Because he's walking, he's on the treadmill, he's bicycling, all kinds of stuff just after 6 visits. All
Is
right.
it?
So I
Uh,
just wanted
mhm.
to tell you what else you should look for. Medical
Yeah.
grade lights
Yeah.
that don't generate heat.
Mhm.
You want the top canopy of that bed to come down onto your body.
Mhm.
The further away the lights are from your body, you lose power exponentially, and that doesn't work. You also, as I mentioned, you want to customize the treatment so that a larger person gets a different dose than a smaller person, but also based on condition as well. And then
Mhm.
another thing is you want the ability to pulse the wave. So
Mhm.
some of you have heard of healing frequencies, resonating frequencies.
Sure.
Different tissues in your body resonate with different frequencies. And we use that in the training. By the way, we include 32 things in the purchase with the bed, which of course includes all the training, the coaching, the marketing, and everything that you would need.
Mhm.
So when you go to the website trifectalight.com and go to the contact us page,
Mhm.
on the left side is find a location closest to you. So
Mhm.
you can try the bed 6 times if you have an issue. Again, if you feel great, if you're in perfect shape, I don't know if you're going to see an issue. So if you want to test the bed out, bring somebody with you who's a mess. The messier, the better. Now, on the right side of that same contact us page is the information to find out if this makes sense to incorporate in your business. And what kind of business are we talking about? Pretty much anybody in the health industry, the fitness industry, the entire beauty industry, your fine lines and wrinkles, and the face is going to look fantastic. Even mental health, weight loss, of course, we talked about that. And then I wanted to mention about athletes. If an athlete gets in the bed before their game or their whatever, they will perform better. No question about it. And then if they get into bed again afterwards, they will recover much faster and much more thoroughly. So when you hear about an athlete that's injured and can't do whatever he's doing, know that he hasn't gotten into this bed. It's the Pro 450 Trifecta Light. If they haven't used our bed, and that's why we're with the NBA, we're with the Olympic training centers, we're with many athletic facilities throughout the country, and of course individual facilities and doctors and all kinds of stuff. But again, in the athletic programs, if you're not using this bed, and then somebody next to you who's usually you guys are racing really tight and really close, and you're not using the bed and he is, he's going to beat you. He's going to beat you. I know it sounds crazy, but I get these kind of calls right now. There's a guy named Harry Gigliotti. Now, Harry is called Harry the Hitman Gigliotti, and he is now the number one uh, bare knuckle boxer at his weight class internationally. He went to London on July 4th to fight this bout. And I knew kind of, I didn't know when it was, but then there it is on ESPN. And I said, oh my God, that's Harry. I told my wife, that's Harry. Now, Harry loves getting in our bed. He gets in a month or two before his bout, within his workout, and then gets in it again after the bout. Because what's unique about boxing amongst, or any of these kind of martial arts, things like that, when you do any activity like football, basketball, baseball, you might get injured. But as a boxer, guaranteed you're going to get injured. So win or lose, they want to use our bed before their bout and soon for at least a month after their bout to recover so much quicker. He had a cut lip from one of his, not this fight, but one of the ones before, he could not believe how much quicker, how much faster he recovered from that split lip, is the way he described it. So
You
anyhow, you
mentioned,
can see that I'm extremely passionate about this, and I can go on forever, but I certainly want to answer any questions. I don't want to mention one other thing. When the person
yeah.
gets in our bed, they keep their eyes closed and their mouth open. Mouth,
Uh-huh.
because we want to get all this glorious healing energy into their mouth, but not to wear the goggles. The goggles will make sure that you don't get this glorious energy into the eyes. Now, why do you want that? First of all, somebody might say, well, can it get through the eyelid? If it can get through the skull and get to the brain, it can get to the eyelid. And so through the eyelid. And so then you have, name anything in the eye, macular degeneration, macular edema, uveitis, glaucoma, floaters, especially floaters, phenomenal, easy things to handle. But just about anything in the eye has responded beautifully. Now, what that's about is that the more blood supply an area has, the quicker it's going to heal.
Yeah.
And so using the bed to enhance that, the eye has a tremendous amount of blood supply. It's very well what we call vascularized. The joints in your body have terrible vascularization. They don't get a lot of blood supply there. So they normally would heal much slower, but even with the bed, it will enhance and accelerate that healing significantly. Ligaments, tendons, joints in general are not great centers of blood supply.
Yeah, you kind of answered my one question about why you have to wear goggles, especially if red light therapy may be beneficial for stimulating things in your eyes as well. So, I mean, you just addressed it, but I wanted to also ask you. You brought up a health span, and there have been studies about telomere health and red light therapy. Wanted to get your thoughts on the evidence of red light therapy when it comes to slower cellular aging at the
I have a whole
genetic.
chapter on cellular success
Mhm,
um, in the book.
mhm,
But I can tell you that what happens is, if to use a simple terminology, the ends of these telomeres
mhm,
become frayed. They look
mhm.
like ropes that get frayed, and as that continues on, it'll enhance aging. And
Right.
what they've found is red light therapy reverses that and or prevents it from getting even occurring in the first place. And again,
Mm.
don't believe me. Well, of course you can read my book, but I guess that means you're believing me. But you can go to Google Scholar and put in red light therapy in quotes and then telomeres or something to that effect and see what comes up. Now, I haven't done that research, so I'm
Uh,
going in it to blind and just tell you, go do it.
I, yeah,
I
Dr.
trust.
Dr. Carl, you mentioned you're 73 years young, and it was just your birthday, so happy belated birthday. But I wanted to know what sort of daily non-negotiable health regimen you follow, and what have you done for years to sort of stay healthy, in addition to red light therapy, but any other things that you focus on?
I think one thing is important is this is not in any order, but one thing comes to my mind is exercise.
Yeah.
And what some people do is if they're not extremely, like you at Fit Expo, I mean, did you see a lot of fit people? I mean, they were like muscles on their muscles.
I was shocked. I'm so glad you brought that up because I wasn't going to talk about it in this episode, but I was literally shocked. I could not, I couldn't believe how many young people and older are massive. I mean, the amount of like, and I'm not accusing anybody of using steroids or anything like that. It's a, but I
They're
mean,
thick.
it looked very unnatural, and
Yeah.
the amount of people that are waiting in line to look like those people was really
Oh, they
shocking
wanted
to me.
their signature. So
Exactly.
autograph. I mean, they were right behind me. I was interviewed. You saw where the arm wrestling part
Yeah,
section.
yeah, 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 yeah.
I was being interviewed right there. And behind me, all of a sudden, you'd hear screaming and yelling. I did about 10 interviews over upstairs in the VIP lounge, and they came down to interview me down by the bed.
Right.
But you know, I was raised differently. In New York, it was thought that if you spent that much time in your life in the gym, which there were very few back then, that you were very selfish, that you were, imagine you're just taking care of yourself. You're not going to be able to help. You can't have a family like that. You can't.
Mhm.
Well, anyhow, so you know what? I don't want to get involved with that. What I wanted to mention is that what people neglect to do is if you don't do the exercise first before you do anything else, the life gets in the way. Life gets in the way. So if you normally get up at 7, get up earlier and exercise. And I'm just telling you, you want to incorporate it in your schedule, but try to do it before you do anything else. As far as eating, I would drive the average person a little nutty because number one, I have never smoked. I don't drink alcohol, just like Trump doesn't, whether you like him or not, he doesn't drink. So no smoking, no drinking, no drugs, no nothing in my body that's not natural and not shouldn't be in there. So you know those things called vaccinations? Not in my body, not in my kid's body, not in my wife. We did what we had to do to get around that. And
Right.
that's a whole nother story. The other thing is in regards to eating, is staying away from a few things that will do you in. And that includes, everybody knows what you shouldn't eat, but that includes starchy carbohydrates. The way to look at spaghetti, for example, which you can have occasionally, but spaghetti is handled by your body like it's a bowl of sugar. And I know you wouldn't eat a bowl of sugar, so I would suggest limiting your pasta intake, limiting your bread intake. So it's starchy carbohydrates, simple sugars, sodas, and alcohol. Those are the killers for dieting, weight loss, but health in general.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much it. So eating, smart exercise, staying away from things you already know are not good for you. Now, some of you can't stay away from it, so why don't you just limit or lessen the amount that you're taking right now? You smoke this much, smoke less. You drink that much, drink less. Now you're going to hear all kinds of things that say, that drinking is good for you. Never. However, occasionally, okay, but if you're doing it and you're addicted to it because it's the only way you can de-stress, maybe you should figure something else out. And I can tell you how to de-stress is sometimes exercise. If you get exhausted enough, people say I can't sleep because and they have to take all the drugs. I take no drugs. I'm 73 years old and I don't take anything, nothing. I take some vitamins, but that's about it.
What's is there a better what's the best time to use red light therapy or your bed? Is it when you first wake up and you're doing sort of your meditation and exercise and do it to prep for the day, or is it something you do late in the day, or does it even matter?
Doesn't matter.
Hmm.
It wouldn't matter. Like people say there's certain times to do sunlight, but remember with sunlight, you're at 1/10,000th of the power of what the bed is.
Hmm.
So, they feel like it should be in the early waking hours when the sun first rises. I'm telling you that we have seen success and it doesn't seem to. If I told you that it was only at 10 o'clock in the morning, and yet and still we have all these offices that have it. So that means they'd only be able to treat for one treatment a day. That's not what's happening. They're seeing 10 to 30 people, well, 30 is tough, but 10 to
Yeah.
20 people a day, all day long. And they're the ones that are contacting me with great success. Now, what I told you is when people buy our equipment, we also include the marketing stuff. So I wrote another book
Yeah.
that it just came out, and it's basically the ultimate guide to building your red light business.
Hmm.
And so I also do webinars and stuff to make sure that people who have our equipment are not successful. They're outrageously successful and they
Love it.
love it. I mean, in this world today, you don't want to have any opportunity for someone to go online and badmouth you. So we do whatever we can to make people happy.
Love it. Uh, Dr. Carl, I'm going to switch subjects for a couple of minutes. I ask all my guests some music related questions. So if you don't mind,
Music,
music, yes. So if you
I'm
don't mind,
music is always in my head. I whistle all day long and drive my wife crazy. But what's your
let's do it. All right. If you remember, what was the very first concert you ever went to?
Can I tell you the first concert I didn't go to? So I
Yeah,
was all
sure.
set to go to Jefferson Airplane, and we're out in the playing ball, and the ball hits me in it hits a rock, hits me like this, and I've never had this happen to me before, and never since I was knocked out unconscious for a
Yeah,
second, just a very short second.
yeah,
And then I get up and they go, "You're right." I go, "No, I'm fine. Don't worry about it." I start walking, totally don't know where the hell I'm going.
yeah,
Wind up, eventually they have to lead me. And within an hour, well, shorter than that, I said, "Guys, I'm in trouble. You have to
yeah,
take me." Now, this was on campus in school.
yeah,
So I tell you first that there was a Jefferson Airplane that I didn't go to because that was that night and I didn't make it. And I mention this because we were poor.
yeah,
And I can't remember before that ever going to a concert. And that concert was on campus, would have been free.
yeah.
I didn't have albums. We didn't have, my mother's philosophy was if you can hear it on the radio, what do you need an album? And we were very poor.
All
But no
right.
problem. I didn't know how poor it was. But so my first paid for concert, it could have been Stevie Wonder, Michael Jackson, uh, Elton John. I mean, I've
What
gone
what was the last concert you attended?
probably Elton John.
Elton John at Dodger Stadium?
No, no,
Uh,
this was indoors at the what was called Staples Center and now is called whatever. I
Yeah,
saw Pink. I mean, I
yeah,
love concerts. I think they're great, but sometimes, like the Pink concert, it
yeah,
was out at SoFi Stadium, which seats I don't know,
uh,
100,000
yeah,
people,
yeah, yeah,
and it
yeah.
was the acoustics weren't great, and she was wonderful, and
Yeah, I don't like that stadium either.
she
I
goes
agree with you.
flying all over the stadium. You've never
Yeah.
seen her, so that's fun, but that wasn't my favorite concert.
All right. So another one more music related question. For the next year, you could only listen to 5 albums. Now, you don't have to remember the name of the album, like you mentioned, Pink or Jefferson Airplane or something. It can be just the artist. You don't have to mention the album. But what would be those 5?
Joni Mitchell,
Hmm.
Rolling Stones,
Hmm.
Beatles, um, James Taylor, And I can't think of it. I mean, but that's my era, you
One,
know.
one more.
One more. You're a bit of a troublemaker. So I guess Judy Collins.
There you go. All right. So, final question for you. Please describe what your room looked like growing up.
So I was, again, we were not well off and had bunk beds with my older brother, who was really a jerk to me. We're much better now, but as growing up, he was not pleasant to me. So we were supposed to share going top. I was going to be on the bottom and he was on the top, and then we were supposed to switch. And once I got on the top, he never would switch with me on the bottom again. And he would every once in a while just kick my mattress.
Of course.
Yeah, I guess I did my homework in that room. I can't remember. I was a very good student, and my brother was a terrible student. That's why probably he didn't like me. I had a lot of friends. He didn't. I did well in school. He didn't. Um, but he turned out to be very successful as a businessman, and has a very beautiful, wonderful family, and so do I.
Yeah,
But anyhow, my room was very tiny. I don't think, I mean, my kitchen was so small that you literally could put your hands out like that, and that was probably the length of the kitchen.
sure. Was there anything on the walls? Was there any artwork or
No,
posters or drawings? Nothing like that.
no. We
Yeah,
had a phone on the wall.
yeah. I
That I
remember
remember.
those. I
And
remember
I would
those as
go,
well.
Mom, 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 Mom. The ice cream man's here. The ice cream man. Can I go? And she would not be here, pretend like she can't hear me. And any time within the conversation, she said yes, but not to me, to them. I go, okay, good. I'd run out,
You're gone.
take the dime and go get ice cream or something.
Dr. Carl, you already mentioned a couple of times, but please mention how people can get in touch with you. Where can they get the trifecta red light therapy bed? Where can they get your books? Anything else that you wanted to mention?
So the website is trifectalight.com. And if they go to the contact us page, you can, on the left side, find a location closest to you, right side, find if it makes sense to purchase something such a thing. And then further down on that page is just a general information that you can request. And that if you say, get this to Dr. Rothchild, I will definitely see it. I get this, this is what I do all day long. Besides educating, I handle correspondence and stuff like that. And if you have questions about it, it's beautiful. That means you're actually thinking about, how important your health and well-being is. And by the way, there's a beautiful video out there which essentially says if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. And that's the truth. And if you don't know that, you should know that. If you don't have your health, you've got nothing.
Yeah, I want to reemphasize what you just said, because I speak to a lot of people who are, financially successful a lot. And, you talk to them about their goals, and you talk to people about goals. I want to achieve this. I want to do this. I want to give this to charity. But when somebody doesn't feel well, when they're sick, there's only one goal. That's to get better. Nothing else matters. So I'm glad you brought that up.
And that's why a lot of rich people get this bed.
Yeah.
You don't have to be rich, but you know what? Most people do not realize how costly it is to be sick. Not just in medicine and doctors and all that, but what you lose out of your life when you're sick. So there are a lot of people that are not necessarily rich that recognizing getting a bed like this in their life that can enhance their health and well-being so dramatically that they're willing to do that. But certainly most people who have more money than health will recognize that this is a smart idea for them. And
100%.
and if you could do it preventatively and not wait until you're half dead, that's better.
Yeah, for
Obviously.
sure. And for my audience, thank you so much for being with us. Thank you again. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share. If you like this episode, leave us some wonderful 5-star reviews. If you don't like this episode, leave a review anyway. We'll learn and get better. Also, thank you for buying my book, Making Cannabis Personal. And thank you for all the feedback. It's been wonderful. Dr. Rothchild, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for being on. Thank you so much for sharing this technology with everyone. And everybody can go and get a bed.
Cat Stevens, I just thought of that. That would be another one.
There you go.
Hey, thank you
Perfect.
so much,
Thank
okay?
you. All right. Take
All
care.
right.
Hey, everyone. Thank you for watching and listening. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button, share this episode, and hit that bell. Like, comment, I so appreciate that. And check me out on social under Len May or Len May DNA. Find out more on LinkedIn or lenmaycoaching.com. And remember, everything is personal.